Welcome to Drinks in the Library, the only library where drinks aren't just allowed, they are required. I'm your librarian host, Gigi Howard, and each episode I'll be interviewing a guest about a much-loved book that we will be pairing with a drink for you to enjoy along with us or consider for your next book club meetup. As always, stay curious and support your local library. Hello, Libration Nation. This week, our book is The Undead Fox of Deadwood Forest by Aubrey Hartman. This is a fairly newly released middle grade book that features Clare, an undead fox who ushers in wandering animal souls to their afterlife realms of peace, pleasure, progress, and pain in the perpetual autumn setting of Deadwood Forest. Clare lives a solitary life, meticulously tending to his mushroom garden and enjoying his tree sap tea until a badger named Ginger Snipes arrives and disrupts his routine. My guest this week is the lovely Angie Zhao. Born and raised in Richmond, Angie was a VCU English major and has spent the last 4 years working as an events and marketing manager at a children's bookstore in Richmond. When she's not planning author events or school visits, she loves visible mending, making jewelry for her friends, trail running, and of course, getting lost in a good story. A lover of books for both children and adults, Angie is drawn to clever, form-bending tales and writing that finds magic in the mundane. Now, Clare's favorite drink, as I mentioned already, was his tree sap tea. We created this using black tea, maple syrup, and peaches since we recorded in the summer. Feel free to add some bourbon if you like. Enjoy hot or cold year-round as you imagine yourself cozying up in Deadwood Forest. One last thing before we get started, if you're enjoying Drinks in the Library, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Tell a friend about it this week. I really appreciate it, and it helps me grow. All right, let's get to it. But Angie, I'm so excited you're here. I also am excited because I think this is like the second middle grade book that I've done on here. I did Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes.
But you said, can we do middle grade? And I was like, let's go for it. So what book do we have today?
Today we have The Undead Fox of Deadwood Forest by Aubrey Hartman. Mm-hmm. This book is brand spanking new, I would say, to the general public. It came out in late February of this year, and I read it like 2 or 3 months after it came out. It's a middle grade story set in this place called Deadwood Forest. It supposedly exists in like our ordinary world. It's not quite a hidden world. And it serves as this sort of bridge between the ordinary world and the afterlife realms. And in this forest, by the way, this forest is in a perpetual state of autumn, which is just delightful. I know that there are some readers who will really get a kick out of that. Mm-hmm. But in this forest, there is a soul creature that resides there named Clare. Clare is an undead fox. And so just like the forest, he's not quite alive, not quite dead. And he lives alone there, and his job is to be an usher of wandering souls. And so animal souls that have passed and that need some guidance into finding their final resting place in the afterlife. And so Clare's job is to help guide them to that resting spot. And we can get into the 4 afterlife realms later, but Clare lives a very solitary, very predictable life. He is very meticulous and enjoys his creature comforts. He tends to his cottage and his mushroom garden very diligently. He loves his tree sap tea. Mm-hmm. And he's also very, very good at his job, and he really enjoys getting to guide animals that have passed into this place where they belong. It's up until one day there comes a badger named Ginger Snipes who arrives at his door quite unexpectedly and kind of turns his whole world upside down as she's unable to enter any of the afterlife realms. Yeah. And so her and Claire kind of have to form this reluctant team to try and figure out what is going on. Claire is wrestling with some anxieties of his own that he's not communicating to Ginger Snipes. I will say there's also this looming premonition, sort of foretold by one of the other characters.
Yes.
That will also come into play and sort of make the stakes even higher in the book.
Yes. Yeah. So there's so many things we can kind of go into a little bit. And we already covered who you were when you picked this up. And I guess it's kind of, I do want to talk a second real quick. Like, do you read a lot of middle grade books?
I do read a lot of middle grade. And so I'm not a bookseller, but I work at a children's bookstore. So I'm the events and marketing person at a children's bookstore. And so I do have to hand sell books, and so I do a lot of reading, and typically I'm actually reading for the events that we put on. So the books that are going to be featured at an event is what I'm reading. And so I think it was May when I started reading this book because our school visit calendar was starting to quiet down a little bit as the school year started to close out, and there wasn't that much time for school events. And so it was at work that I discovered like a stack of these. I think they had just been unpacked by a bookseller, and I was immediately drawn to the beautiful cover and also the title. Yeah. And I also had just come off of reading some pretty heavy like adult literary fiction. It was the upcoming Sayaka Murata, her new book, Vanishing World. I picked up an advanced reader copy at like a conference earlier this year. Anyway, for those who don't know her, her stories are great. They're very bleak though, and so I was looking for something a little bit more healing and lighter, but also I wouldn't necessarily say this is the lightest topic at all. In fact, it's pretty dark, and the topics themselves, but the way that Aubrey, the author, goes about handling them is just so gentle and so beautifully handled. Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, Claire is dealing with a lot of anxiety, a lot of grief. I guess let's talk about who's Claire, like, at his core. Yes. So we established he's the undead. He's undead. He's not quite dead, not quite alive. His job is the usher of wandering souls of Deadwood Forest. It is a very solitary, very lonely life, and he feels that, I think, pretty deeply, despite being so enchanted by the sort of mundane habits that he wraps himself into, like tending to his mushroom garden, like sort of organizing his bookshelf and reading the human books that he collects from Deadwood Dump. It's a lonely life. There's no other creature there. In fact, the only other creature he interacts with on a regular basis, besides the wandering souls that come in, are the trash rats at Deadwood Dump. And so Claire he's lonely, but he's also he's quite refined, and I think the way that he carries himself, he wears a cloak that he found at Deadwood Dump and a monocle, and a huge part of why he wears those pieces is to kind of conceal his body, which is very mangled and patchy and not presentable in his eye, and you'll find out that's because he got into an accident, which is the cause of his death. And I don't think that's I think a lot of that's revealed at the beginning. Yeah. I will tell you, I had such a Castaway film moment with him and his best friend, the mushroom. Captain. It is very like Wilson the volleyball. Oh, yes, absolutely. Yeah, of course, Captain is a mushroom. Mushroom, he is alive, and there's a lot to be said to that. But yeah, he's just like a lonely guy in the woods, sort of. And you find out a lot about him and his fear. And his fear is that he's going to be sent to one of the 4 realms that's pain. Yes. Yeah. So what are the 4 realms? Yeah. You said one of them, the most sort of dramatic, intimidating one, which is pain. And then the others are peace, pleasure, and progress. And so the idea, one of the sort of rules of the afterlife is that every animal soul will go or be accepted into the realm that they feel the most comfortable in. And that is depending on sort of how they lived their life while they were alive, how they were loved, all of these aspects of what made up this animal when they were alive sort of goes into determining which realm they belong in. And it's up to Clare to kind of have conversations with them when they visit him in Deadwood to help determine where they go.
Yeah. Yeah, so he believes that when he dies eventually, because he is undead,
yes.
So he's kind of trapped. He's kind of like Charon from the River Styx.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about the River Styx as like a parallel to the Deadwood Forest, because both sort of are these liminal spaces between two places, and I think that's one of the things I love about the book so much, is that it has you stay in that liminal space for the entire story, right?
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily about the afterlife realms and what's happening in there. It's about the place in between. And so I was thinking about the River Styx too, even though I think that, I mean, there are obviously major differences, but I think one I can kind of hold on to the most is that the River Styx, and that the way that Greek mythology approaches death in that lens is much more fearful and sort of like imminent, whereas I feel in the Undead Fox, it's a little bit slower and more gentle.
Yeah.
And it's as if the animal souls have some kind of a choice. Right.
And they'll end up wherever they end up is where they're supposed to be. I mean, I think pain is sort of like the hell version. It sounds like he says a lot that the worst animals that he sees comes through all go to pain,
but they feel the most comfortable there, which is very interesting.
Yeah.
And they're doing exactly what they want to be doing.
Yeah.
Being miserable with all the other animals in there.
Right.
Yeah.
So the book is a lot about like death and grief. What is it about that? I mean, it's for middle grade, that it's making those subjects accessible to young readers, right?
Yeah.
Do you find that important? I mean, I think it's an important part of this book, but what do you think?
Absolutely. I think it's very important, and it's one that I feel like even just working in the bookstore, the mention of death in a book, if we're trying to sort of explain it or book talk it to a family who has come in, can turn them away immediately. They're like, oh, I don't want my child having to hear about that. We don't want to have to explain that right now. But I think that, so many parts of this book celebrate death and the process of dying just by spending time there. I think everything from the way that Deadwood Forest is crafted, right? The leaves that are constantly in this in-between state of being alive and dying, the mushrooms that thrive off of decaying and dead things. I think that those sort of visual, like sensory elements help to bring this appreciation for death, but then also I think the space that Aubrey Hartman holds in sort of the painful moments of what it is like to die, and sort of what a character might be feeling about like their previous life, shame that they still bring in.
Yeah.
And I think that the book, clearly, it's just so delightfully written as well. I think it just reminds me of a folk tale. Every turn of phrase and sort of snarky comment in the dialogue is just, it begs to be read aloud.
Yeah.
And that reminds me, I think that the narrator plays a huge role in kind of helping to sort of parse out these really maybe more anxious, like tougher moments in the book.
Yeah. The narrator, it's kind of, I don't want to say too much because you do find out who the narrator is at the very, very end. But they've got kind of like a tongue-in-cheek view of this sort of somewhat sad story a little bit.
Definitely. And I mean, from the very first page, the narrator tries to sort of just lull you in and give you the choice as to like whether you want to continue or not.
She literally says that. She's like, "Oh, you can just close this book up. You're not brave enough to read it."
Yeah, and then there are like several points where she's like, "Now I know it's getting kind of crazy, kind of scary. It might be kind of late for you. It might be your bedtime. You can just close it now." But then she's like, "Okay, obviously I know you didn't close it. So like, here's what happens."
Yeah. I want to turn the reins over to you. You've got a lot of notes in here, and I'm wanting to know what did you want to talk about from those?
Yeah, where to even begin is just because there are, like you said, there are so many parts of this book that you can like unpack.
Yeah, I even have a few I have a few notes in my library copy that I have here.
Yeah. I think that there is something, and I touched on this just a little bit like earlier, but there's something really. This story is so original, right? And reading a lot of middle grade and YA, it feels extra special when you run into like a wholly original story, even though there are so many elements that you can I pull out of sort of classics.
Yeah.
And there's some familiarity there, but the genre is really, like, I was thinking about the genre question because that was one that you had sent, but I wanted to say hidden world fantasy. It is, I think it has elements of that, like Harry Potter or like, you know, the Spiderwick Chronicles, where it's a world that's exists within our own but is kind of just out of sight or is intentionally made or concealed by whoever lives in that hidden world. But this is not quite the same, where the forest, this Deadwood Forest, is almost just like a forest in your backyard, and it exists, it operates under the sort of magic that's happening right underneath your nose, but that is, I wouldn't say it's intentionally concealed from humans, but humans just don't notice it. And you see that with like sort of in the beginning with several of the human characters that sort of come into view. But I think it's almost like, I love how she subverts this like hidden world fantasy where the world is not hidden. It's actually in fact right there. And it's also not the fantasy world in and of itself, but it's a connector to the fantasy world. Yeah.
Talking about the world a little bit, I did want to talk about the characters, and we've talked about Clare a lot, but I think Ginger Snipes, I mean, it's definitely like an odd couple, right? Or Gloomy Sunshine kind of thing. It's not a romance, but
no.
Who's Ginger Snipes?
Ginger Snipes is the badger soul that kind of rudely awakens Clare one of the evenings. She arrives very unexpectedly, and is in need of assistance from Clare to decide where she's going to go, and she is unable to enter any of the realms. But she serves as a real foil to Clare in that she's loud. She's not the most cunning, I would say. I think Clare would describe her as unrefined, whereas he would describe himself as like kind of cultured, and he reads like human books and he pours himself tea. Ginger Snipes really just enjoys having fun and enjoys parts of life that I think Clare would never dream of enjoying. And she's also very outspoken. I think that's one of the sort of details in the book that is so confidently shared, like many of them, which is that badgers are pretty feisty and will ask you a lot of questions and will also like fiercely defend the things that they love. And so she challenges Clare in many, many ways, but she also is one of the characters that you find deeply cares for him. Yeah. And sees him in a way that no other character saw him.
Right. Yeah. I thought one interesting moment for me in the book was when she said something about his looks, right? Because he's always trying to hide himself and to protect himself from other people. And she kind of points out, I forget exactly how. Do you remember that scene, what she said?
Is it where he's expecting a reaction out of her that she does not give him? Yeah. It's a very vulnerable moment for him where he's exposed. He doesn't have his monocle. He doesn't have his cloak. And Ginger Snipes sort of looks him up and down, and I know exactly what which scene you're talking about.
Yeah, it's so good. While we're looking into it, I also wanted to mention, so the artwork in this book is really incredible.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Pictures. There's a lot of pictures in here.
It's, I believe the illustrator is Marcin Manor, who is based in Poland, and he did the interior illustrations as well as the cover art. And yes, I think it just brings the story to life in a way, and I almost can't imagine the book without them. It, I think, brings really great sort of pause and reflection in the areas that they're sort of interspersed.
Yeah. I'm still trying to find that scene. I guess we can come back to it a little bit, but I just thought it was so amazing how Ginger Snipes sort of... I don't think I was expecting as much from this book as it gave. I guess maybe I was underselling it, not underselling it, but I was like, oh, it's middle grade. We'll see. But it really, I think it teaches some personal lessons about being comfortable with yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. And I think that came out a lot in their relationship.
Absolutely. And I think it's so, Clare, as we've established, he's deeply insecure, right? He's, as much as he knows the things that he likes and has all of these sort of refined preferences, he is deeply insecure about the way he looks and about the way that others perceive him. And one of his biggest fears, or one of the things that disturbs him the most, is being viewed as a monster.
Yeah.
And so I think he internalizes that by trying to do his job really well, by trying to take care of his mushrooms and nurture them in a very sort of tender way. And so he is balancing this ego that he has, I think, not a toxic ego, but one that he wants to be good, and he wants others to see him for who he is, which is good. But his exterior and the job that he has and everything that he sort of represents as this undead creature, this usher of wandering souls, challenges that, and always is the thing that everyone sees first.
Yeah. Coming back to my general questions, what would you say is the vibe of this book?
The vibe? Well, number one, I have to say the vibe is immaculate. It is beautiful, and it is grim, but delightful. It is sort of atmospheric, and it feels like you're going on a walk in the woods in the autumn, and you can smell the decaying leaves and feel the chill in the air, but it's the most beautiful chill you've felt on your face. And I would say Halloween, as we start to approach, is absolutely perfect to start to read this. It's cozy and whimsical and feels like a book you want to curl up with a cup of tea. But yeah, no, I agree. And then talking about Halloween, so Halloween is a key point in the story. He hates Halloween. Yes. And in the book it's referred to as All Hallows Eve.
Yeah.
Which, it's those little details, I think, that make the world building, the confident world building that you just you drink up as a reader. And Clare hates All Hallows Eve. It's the day that he despises the most and dreads the most, and it's because it's two things. On All Hallows Eve is when the children of the ordinary world in their Halloween costumes come to the edge of Deadwood and shout and scream, referencing this Deadwood monster that will come out or will eat the children if they were to ever go in there. And so in that way, Clare is so disturbed and it just rings in his head all year round. But then in another way, All Hallows Eve is the night where all four realms of the afterlife, the power is the most propulsive, and all gates to the realms are open at the same time, and it is just this kind of crazy, chaotic climate inside of Deadwood that's rather scary. And so Clare sort of resorts to just staying in his bed for the entire night with moss plugged in his ear, his one good ear, because his other ear is mangled up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the kids, they sing the song. And so I listened to it. I did the audiobook. So do you ever do this where you have the audiobook and you have the regular book and you can go back and forth?
It's funny. I have never gotten into audiobooks.
Okay.
But I think I would enjoy that because I love being read to.
Yeah.
But I also love being able to see the words.
Yes. Yeah. I like both. I do both. But I will say the narrator of the audiobook, I kept thinking, at first I was like, Gwyneth Paltrow is narrating this book. It's not Gwyneth Paltrow. It's someone named, I have it written down in my book, Marissa Callan, and she did an incredible job, but they also do like audio effects too. Oh, wow. So like when the children were singing, they actually had like children like kind of taunting sound singing. Goodness. So that was really interesting. Oh my goodness. To hear. I will say it was a whole production that they did to put together. So I highly recommend that. But yeah, so going back, it's a very October book.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Talking a little bit, what do we know about Aubrey Hartman?
Aubrey Hartman.
Anything?
Yeah. No, this is based off of my research of her. Am I following her on Instagram? She grew up in Virginia, and she currently lives in California. Oh. And her mother was a picture book author. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can feel her reading influences in her writing just in this book. She cited some of her favorites as, her favorite one is The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, Matilda, A Wrinkle in Time, Ella Enchanted, Tuck Everlasting, like these classic sort of adventure magic stories for children. She also authored one other book, I believe, which came out before this one, called The Lion of Larkhays Manor. Yes. I feel like it has a similar cadence to it in the title, also dealing with some magic and animals. But I feel like you can tell in her writing that she really understands her readers, her young readers, and she really cares for them, and she wants to guide them on their reading journey. I feel like I feel that in the way that she has written this book. And I'm excited. I haven't read The Lion of Larkhays Manor, but that is on my TBR since I loved this one.
Can't wait to hear what you think. I want to say what really, honestly, and I know for anyone listening to this, I'm about to say what really nailed the book home for me was the last bit. of the narrator's note. And I'll just read it really quick. And it starts off, it says, "This is a story about death. It is also a tale of love, but in the quietest corners of the pages is an exploration of loss of purpose, a belief, an expectation of how life or undeath should be. And thus it is an exploration of how to let go, or when it is right, how not to let go, how to hold on, however gently, to the memory of that which is lost. For lost, dear reader, is the elder sister to grief." I mean, I have to stop because I'm just going to keep going. But, yeah, I do think grief and death are one of those things that, like, we all have to go through. And yet, how do we guide our kids and how to manage some of these things? And I really, this book does it.
It does it so well, and I think it starts by just not shying away from it. I think there are moments in this book that I think of tenderness, of compassion, of viewing all souls, all not living and sort of inanimate, with treating them with respect and with dignity in the way that Clare sort of treats all of the objects in all of his possessions, his mushrooms, with this level of dignity. But in the same way that the book doesn't shy away from these moments of love, it doesn't shy away from some quite cruel moments, right?
Yeah.
Some tragic moments. It spends time with all of these areas, which but in a way that is so accessible but not watered down, right? But so real for I think young readers, but as well as adults. I think that plenty of adults can read this book.
Yeah. Oh, I did, and I loved it. And like I said, you can do the audiobook too, and it was perfection. I mean, they've really made it. It's a beautiful piece of art. I definitely think
Agreed.
so. Yeah. So real quick, we have to tie in the drink.
Yes.
And kudos to you for thinking this through. So thank you so much, because I don't know if I would have picked this up as well. But he, as you said, he makes his tree sap tea.
Yes. No, it's a tongue twister. Yeah. I mean, the amount of times it's mentioned, it's just like a ritual for Clare that I by the end of the book, I'm like, I need to try this. Like, what is this tree sap tea? And there's areas in the book where he kind of describes the flavor, but it's he very much enjoys it and gets a lot of comfort, but I know Ginger Snipes does not and thinks it's very bitter and just why would anybody drink this?
Yeah. So we made our own version. So this is I think it's called a maple peach tea sipper. Now, obviously, tea you can have warm, and I think you could make this warm. Ours are iced. And the other important thing is that instead of sugar, ours have maple syrup in them as their sweetener.
Yes.
And then also I was like, these have bourbon in them. So that's usually tea kind of cocktails are paired with bourbon, but you could definitely make this without bourbon. I also muddled the peaches down that are with it. So that's sort of like an extra fun part with it. But
no, it's delicious. It's very refreshing.
Yes.
Highly recommend.
So, yeah. Thank you for saying let's do something with maple syrup. That was perfect.
Of course.
Thinking about it a little bit more, what were some of your favorite scenes in here or moments that you want to pull out?
Yeah, there are so many good ones. I mean, that's the other thing about this book. It's so funny, and that's another, I think, device, whether intentionally or not, that Aubrey sort of employs to make these heavier topics a little bit more digestible for kids. But there's this one particular scene I love, and it's when Ginger Snipes and Clare meet for the first time, and Clare is, I think, taking a nap, or he's resting in his mushroom garden, and Ginger Snipes kind of awakens him, and he gets startled and screams, and then Ginger Snipes screams, and then they just have this screaming match back and forth, getting startled by each other. But it's just this perfect encapsulation of who Ginger Snipes is, and also, their dynamic. And there are several moments between the two of them that are just so funny, but then also very tender. And I love the scene where we were talking about it earlier, and we need to find it, where Clare is sort of doesn't have his cape or anything, hiding him, and Ginger Snipes just does not give him this disgusted reaction that he is expecting, that he's come to expect from everybody. Yeah. And that really softens him and
yeah. I don't know. Should we try to find it? Oh, this is it. Yeah, it's 197. Oh. And he said, Ginger Snipes took him by the shoulders. You're letting a bunch of idiots weigh in on what ought to be a one-person decision. Clare squinted his good eye. What decision? Whether to love yourself. And he says, was this yet another shortcoming to feel guilty about, not loving himself enough?
Yeah, that's such a... And you get a glimpse of... I think at this point Clare very well. But that sort of thought process that you see coming out of him is so... It's quite sad, right?
Yeah.
The way he operates in viewing himself is constantly through where he falls short. Yeah. And it does... It turns around, right? Yeah. Which is the good thing. There's great character development, and I think what's one of the many things that's so masterfully done in this book is that it is not just character driven. It is not just plot driven. It's actually both at the same time very, very well, right?
Right.
The book, I mean, I read it in one sitting. I think most readers will be able to get through it in a day.
Yeah.
And part of that is because from the very beginning, you move so seamlessly, right, through the plot. It's quite fast-paced, but then also the characters are fully realized, even the side characters, I feel like.
The rats.
The trash rats, who, I don't know if it was just me, Nine, who is the sort of head rat of, he has this mushroom business that he's in with Clare and lives at Deadwood Dump, but the entire time I assigned like a heavy New York accent to him because it just made sense, because that's how, because the way she writes his dialogue is so distinct, and so it just helped me to imagine him that way. But yeah, I feel like you know every character just like 1 to 2 sentences and you immediately have a visual and a sense of them, which is just very difficult to execute, I think, especially for a children's book that's like just shy of like 300 pages.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. And I think having a moment where it's talking about loving yourself, I mean, that's something I think I struggle with it. I think it's a very human thing, but to remember, like, that is so integral to having a joyful life is really self-love, and for her to conquer it or to address it in this book, I was just like, gosh, what an important lesson to learn as like a 10-year-old reading
absolutely.
This. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And then also the talking about the joy, living with both joy and grief. It reminded me so much, forgive me for doing this, but like, it reminded me so much of, this is one of my favorite books. It's the Book of Joy, and it's by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, who's not with us anymore. But one of my favorite lines from this, if you don't mind if I read it real quick.
I'd love to hear.
And it's from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. And so this book talks about it, but then I was like, gosh, also these like great thinkers. Discovering more joy does not, I'm sorry to say, save us from the inevitability of hardship and heartbreak. In fact, we may cry more easily, but we will laugh more easily too. Perhaps we are just more alive, yet as we discover more joy, we can face suffering in a way that ennobles rather than embitters. We have hardship without becoming hard. We have heartbreak without being broken. And
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's like on page 12 of this book, and I was, it's one of my favorite books. But it's so true, and I feel like that's what she's trying to say as well.
Right. She does a great job of not passing judgment or moralizing any particular emotion, but actually really respects all of them and deems all of them as necessary to being whole, right?
Yeah.
To being a whole being. And I haven't encountered a story like this, and this is an original story. I haven't ever encountered it, but it's when I find a story that's as nuanced as this one emotionally, I just I clutch it to my chest and I keep talking about it right for the rest of the year.
I love that. Is there anything we have not gotten to that you wanted to address within the book?
That's a great question.
I always find that question to be like the most helpful, because then someone's like, yes.
I think we touched on this, but I want to just talk about the world building a little bit more, in that it is so confident. And when I say that, I mean that there's this great balance between explaining the details of the world and why the things work the way that they work, and then withholding withholding some information and just kind of letting the audience accept a detail at face value. Like, I think of a few of the things that you sort of accept of the world are that all snakes go to peace, the realm of peace. Mm-hmm. You got it.
Yeah.
Tortoises love their birthdays and they love to party. They're also like the socialites of the forest. And I'm like, and that's it. She doesn't really dive into that, but I'm like, yeah, I believe it. Like, it makes sense. And she kind of, I think, picks these little like inklings that people have about these really well-known animals and just invites you to accept this thing about them, and it feels right. Mm-hmm. But then in other areas, she goes into explaining, right, yeah, the reason that Clare sort of does the things that he does, and the way that the realms operate, which of course is like an important operative detail in the book. But I think that balance between explaining and withholding is mm-hmm. something about this book and about the world that is just like so immersive.
Yeah. Well, I love that too, when things are sort of, you just accept it, you know. It's, my husband always talks about it with like fantasy or science fiction. It's like, don't tell me all these little details. Just say this is how it is, and I'll just take you, you know. And she writes in a way that's so believable, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, I feel like I get to the end of the book. It's like I said, it's just shy under 300 pages, and I know so much, right, mm-hmm. about the world. But it doesn't feel like I'm being spoon-fed and sort of, it doesn't feel heavy.
No, yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. Last question about the book. Who would you recommend this story for?
I don't say this often. I genuinely would recommend this story for pretty much everyone.
Okay.
But I think both children and adults will get something out of this story.
Yeah.
If I'm like playing into sort of preferences as to what people like, I think readers that enjoy a hidden world fantasy and sort of maybe want a little bit of a subversion, but still like the flavor of hidden world fantasy mm-hmm. is great. Readers of like the Brothers Grimm, mm-hmm. And those sort of spooky. I think of, oh my goodness, T.J. Klune and things. A reader that wants something spooky but not too scary. I think that's what's great about this book is it's not too scary. It's not going to like scare away some of the kids, but it also I think it would appeal to just like, you know, the fans of Catherine Applegate and some of the mm-hmm. like lower fantasy or like less heavy fantasy mm-hmm. juvenile fiction. You know? Yeah, I think this is a great grieving book too. Yes, I think that if there is somebody who has lost a loved one or even like mm-hmm. an animal in their life, this book spends time with what that could look like. Yeah. I listened to, in prepping for this, I listened to a really cool podcast called Reading the Middle that she was on. So they just do middle grade books. And she said she wrote this after her, do you know this part? She wrote this after her third child was born and was in the NICU. And also had a she called it a trach. So I guess it's a tracheotomy, but the child had a lot of health issues. And so she was like having to, I guess you have to pull things out of her lungs like every 15 minutes. And she said she wrote it during that time. And it was, like you're saying, it was dealing with grief. And her daughter is alive and I think is healthier at this point. But also just dealing with the grief of, this isn't what I thought this was going to look like, you know? Right. And that happens a lot, too, of even if it's not death, right? Like, grief is so embedded in so many parts of our life. Absolutely. Yeah. And I imagine just because that's not just a one-and-done process, I imagine, right? So she had to spend a lot of time not just, like, physically being there, but mentally, like, staying there. Yeah. Right. So, so I definitely, she wrote that. She said writing is cheaper than therapy. I have to agree with that. True. Yeah. Do you write? I know you're an English major. Yes. Yeah. I haven't done creative writing since since like around college.
Okay.
But I do sort of marketing, sort of writing now for my job, but I have not written creatively since college.
Okay.
But I the times that I do it, it's massively enjoyable.
Yeah.
And I enter a sort of like it reminds me. I get the same feeling when I am reading a really good book. When I'm writing, it's like I just need to see this thing through.
Yeah.
Whether I'm consuming it or putting it out.
Yeah. Well, I do want to say thank you so much for coming on. This has been delightful, but also for getting me to read this book. I don't read a lot of juvenile fiction, and this was a delight. I kind of want to read it. I should read more. I have a 10-year-old. Like, she is in the age to read this book.
I think she would love it.
Yeah, so I might read it with her. Yeah. Now I've got my library copy, and now everybody's going to want it because they're going to listen to this episode, and then, but I've still got it out, y'all, so you're just going to have to wait.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun. Like, how often do I get to just, like, talk about my favorite book in, like, a dedicated space?
Yes.
So,
I know. Well, that's sort of why I did this, because, like, I love it so much. So, yeah. But this was awesome. Thank you.
This was lovely.
Perfect. And then I just hit... Thank you for spending some time with me and my guest for an episode of Drinks in the Library. For more information about the show, you can find us on Instagram at Drinks in the Library, on the World Wide Web, drinksinthelibrary.com, or shoot me an email at drinkspod@gmail.com. Until next time, cheers.